Welcome to the Six Figure Business Mastery Podcast, where every week, Kirsten and Jeanne dive into the essential topics to fuel your business growth. From copywriting to course creation, mindset to video marketing, they've got you covered. Tune in for expert guest interviews on all things marketing and business, and learn how to work on your business, not just in it. So, get ready to unlock your business potential and take it to the next level.
Welcome, everyone. We are thrilled that you joined us here today. My name's Jeanne Willson, and I'm excited. My business partner, Kirsten Graham, is here today, and I'm excited to introduce you to an amazing lady. Her name is Marcy Clark, and her company is Marcy Clark PR and Events. She's a seasoned and connected communication professional. She's got 2 decades of experience in PR, branding, events. She is the founder of Marcy Clark PR and Events, and her work's grounded in the principle of storytelling, creativity, kindness, and integrity. So we are absolutely thrilled to have you here today, Marcy. Thank you for joining us.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you, Jeanne and Kirsten.
Marcy, I am really interested in finding out, how did you get into PR? But I think before we start there, what is PR? Because I feel like there's a lot of confusion around that. So I'd love for you to share with us, exactly what PR is and then your journey into PR.
Yeah. So PR it's a big umbrella, but I would say it's very important that people understand it's underneath the marketing umbrella. It would be something adjacent to advertising, but it's not the same. So PR is earned media, is predominantly, that's the section that I work in. So I'm talking to journalists, to bloggers, to magazine writers and editors, to television producers, radio, podcast hosts like yourself. And I'm saying, hey, this is my client. They have this great story. They have these bona fides. Here's some story angles, some ideas. I think it'd be great for you to talk to them. And I'm not offering these journalists, I'm not offering them money. That's earned media. I'm relationship building. I'm offering them stories of value, content, expertise of value in exchange for securing content for my clients. So clients pay me, usually monthly, and I work with them. I've worked with clients for sometimes, we might do a 2-3 month project, but a lot of times I've worked with clients for 6 months and then it turns into 6 years. So I've had really long, fruitful, heart-centered relationships with clients. I got into PR. I was moving to England right after college and I had studied theater, and I was thinking, what is something I could do that I could be good enough at it? Maybe I could get a work permit in it. And so I tried. Fresh out of college, you can't get a work permit in England, but I did get to work there with my 6-month permit, and I learned so much in a place where they really hold writing very sacred. And I learned about events. I learned about segmentation of markets. I learned about everything about how do you approach the media and tactics and writing a great pitch email. So I've carried that through my career. I moved to New York. I was there for 18 years. Now I'm in California for almost 4 years and in the San Francisco Bay Area.
That is so fascinating. And I'm sure you and Jeanne will have to talk about living in England because she too moved to England.
Yeah, my husband's English, so I lived there for 5 years. But yeah, you're absolutely right about holding English and the written word, so to speak, sacred. So I love that. And you've picked all the big cities, right? London, New York, California, not a city, but San Francisco. So
yeah, I loved living in England, and I think it was a great place to learn the craft of PR, and with a lot of rigor. We worked really hard. Sometimes you'd lock in a room, make 100 calls a day. So just really focused. Yeah.
Yeah. They call it 2 countries that, what do they say? It's something about 2 completely different countries that share a common language or something along those lines. And you have to be really careful with language, especially when you're in England, because some things they mean something completely different over there than they do over here. I learned that the hard way.
Yeah, me too. I
love the fact that I think you've given the most clear definition of PR, which is earned publicity. And I think even though your client is paying you to go out and get them featured, there's no way to pay that magazine or pay that reporter or whatever. So they really are being featured on the merit of the content that you submit to them, the stories that you submit to them. So tell us a little bit about what that would look like as far as when you're helping a client come up with their strategy around their content stories and who you're going to submit to. How does that kind of start off in the relationship?
Oh, I love that question. So What it looks like is first we're sitting down and I tell a lot of my clients, I'm like, I'm the first really in-depth interview that you're going to have before we secure you a lot more. So we sit down, I make it fun, right? I have snacks. I did one in person. I remember we rented a theater space and I had hula hoops and snacks and contact drawing paper and everything. But we really get into a creative space. That's where my theater arts background comes in handy and my approach. But I will also I'm a yoga teacher and can lead meditation. So we'll do some guided meditations and I'll have people brainstorm from that. Where do they see themselves being featured in the media? What's their dream wish list? So the process is really fun. People get a lot just from that initial process. And we come up together in that time. I get tons of deep knowledge from them to rewrite their bio, help maybe edit some of stuff on their webpage, create their press pitch. But also we create based on envisioning different media outlets that are different segments of the market. So I might say, okay, think about the Today Show. What are you talking about there? And then maybe they share a little and I say, oh, I'm seeing this. I'm writing the whole time. Sometimes I have an assistant with me to help capture everything. And then we go to other segments of the market. We might talk about podcasts. What do they listen to? Okay, you're talking to a 6-figure business mastery, or, oh, you're going to talk to this mompreneur podcast. It's a different kind of pitch. And we do television, visual media, right? So where everything, how you pitch the New York Times is different than how you pitch Allure or Elle, right? And then we keep iterating. We have that first meeting. I start the writing materials and then we keep meeting every week. So I'm making media lists. I pay for professional publicists. This is really important. Don't work with a publicist that does not have a professional media database. They're expensive. It's an essential tool. Like I can look up any media outlet in the States. Often I can find Canada, other countries as well. And I can find their contact information via this tool. If I have to do it all by hand, you're not getting it in nearly as much prep. Yeah.
That sounds so interesting. I know you said you'll have clients who start working with you month to month and then stay with you for years. So I would guess these publications are working months in advance. So this is a year-long process where you're pitching to companies when you know that's when they're looking for stories.
Yes. So I think a PR myth that a lot of people have is that PR is something you do when you have, okay, a company thinks, okay, great, we're going to launch this new product in August. Let's look for a PR agency in July, right? Or let's talk to somebody. We just want a project around that. You might be able to find somebody to do that for you. But if they take that and they say, oh yeah, they're just happy to take your money, they're not going to get you much just based on a very short project. It takes the iterative process I discussed. And I will usually start pitching within month 1. So it's not dragging things out, but it's that it takes a while sometimes to fine tune as I send out pitches and then I receive answers to them. I'm A/B testing in real time what messages are working, what language is landing about this client. And so over time, we get a higher and higher response rate. I've had campaigns where I track sometimes where my emails are going, who's opening them. I've had campaigns where I had a response rate of up to, I think it was like 20-30%, maybe writing 200 journalists. And then I had I've had open rates of 40 or 50%.
That's fantastic.
Nobody gets that.
Is that because you have been in the business long enough and all of these people know you by reputation and they know if you're pitching something, you're not throwing crap or spaghetti against the wall and hoping it sticks. They know that if they get your email, it's worth opening and perusing because it may or may not be something they need at that time, but you've built that reputation. Is that correct?
It's definitely part of it because I definitely have a lot of journalists that I've worked with over time. And like last year, I worked with a comedy festival that was touring the country. And then a few months later, I was working with a dance festival, and that was also doing a national tour. And I was able to get a lot of the same journalists did open my email respond. But for that first campaign, it's a lot of new contacts all the time. So it's more, I think, about in the way that I structure my headlines, my emails, the way that I'm very respectful, the way that I get right to the point. And I make it all about them and their readers. What do I think is in it for them? Would they like to attend? Would they like an interview? I'm right up front with what I'm offering them.
So do you work with specifically like events like that, or are there specific types of businesses that you work with?
It's a big variety because I've been in this business 20 years. When I started out in England, the first year I had the first gluten-free food company. I had a fueling solutions company. I had a plastic surgery company. I had other food. It's over the years has been a really big variety, but I would say a few of my niches, I do a lot in the health and wellness space. That's something that's a through line I've always been interested in, and being a yoga teacher. My mom's a nutritionist, and I loved science and chemistry. So I'm comfortable speaking about the science of health and nutrition behind it. And I also have worked with a lot of authors. So they're doing their first book, or in terms of PR being a year-round endeavor, one thing a lot of people don't know is that some people I work with them and they had maybe a publisher for their book, right? They released their book, put it out on the market, and they were surprised. Maybe their publisher helps for the first month or two, and then the publisher's cool. It's going to do what it's going to do. They only have so much bandwidth. So then I get hired a lot of times, and I'm like, yeah, don't worry. We can use the book to position you as an expert, and we can get you more stuff. And a book can have a PR, can be like a new book for a year or so. And you can use it as a bona fide that you're an expert. You can use that for 2, 3, 5 years, your whole career. You can really use that.
Interesting, because we talk to our clients a lot about, because if they're going to start a group coaching program or an online course or things like that, you want to start marketing it long before you've created it. A lot of times people will spend time, just like writing a book, you spend all of this time, but ideally you're making the circuit ahead of time, talking about that book coming out. You're making the circuit ahead of time, getting on podcast, talking about the launch that you're having in 3 months. And I think that's so interesting that people, and I think it's less crazy to say this, it is less scary to write a book or to create a course or program than to get out and talk about it and get out and market it. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, maybe. I think a lot of people hire me, whatever it is, right? I work with a lot of coaches. I work with everything from wellness coaches to business to self-expression, right? And even people that they're very self-expressed themselves, it's a cobbler's shoes situation. You need that help of somebody else. We're just human. It's hard to see all the uniqueness in yourself, to promote yourself. It's not easy, even for myself. I was like, I'm going to pitch myself for some podcast, but it didn't happen right away. I had the thought a few months before I did it. So we're all human. And if you have something you need to market and you're burning time, you're like, oh, my food, my catering business, my food, my restaurant, it's slow. That's costing you money. So hire a publicist, do the marketing sooner rather than waiting.
I think it's so interesting too, because so for example, we talked about podcasts. Jeanne and I don't invite people onto our podcast that we don't believe in, who don't have a great story, who we haven't vetted. And so I think what people sometimes don't understand about being a podcast guest or any type of PR is it really does showcase you as the authority. It gets you in front of these audiences that are already built rather than trying to build your own audience. And I think there's so much power in that. Do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah. So with podcasts and also with radio interviews, television interviews, a magazine profile, right? The real concrete benefit of that is I guess it's threefold, I think. First of all, the people that are listening to this, they might think, wow, okay, I know more about PR. This is helpful. I got given a lot of clear language, clear understanding. and maybe they contact me. But also, when I add this to my social media and my website, people also see that there. They go, oh, she's a publicist. She gets press for her stuff. She's been interviewed on this. She knows what she's talking about. I say it's third-party endorsement turns awareness into a sale, right? It's how you get, I have a good friend and often client, fashion stylist in New York. I've worked with for off and on for 15 years. And she refers me all the time for people. And I see when I'm talking to them, they're looking at my website and they're seeing all the other press I've gotten. They're seeing that I've been featured, right? And it's that like proof. When you have on your website that you've been featured on business podcasts, you've been featured on interviews, your cookbook has been featured on Rachel Ray and Food and Wine. It's like, oh, people are like, you know what? I'll order it. It takes away that hesitation. That's what I would say what media does.
Yeah, and it must be so much fun to work in media now, maybe than back in the day when we started and it was you only had printed publications and before all of the social media, and so much has changed. So I would imagine there's a lot of opportunity, but probably also a lot of competition as well.
It's interesting because it's just always changing. So it forces me to always be learning new skills, new apps, new platforms, right? Sometimes I'm like, oh, I don't want to learn enough. Is this going to last? Think about how many don't last, but it's interesting. And I love that about it. And I would say a lot of heritage traditional media outlets have closed, which is sad, but I'll fall in love with a publication. And then House Beautiful is, I'm trying to think of some of the others.
Oprah magazine.
Yeah, there's still like online some, but it's not the same. And I've had clients where I'm like, oh, great, we got you a column in Latina magazine. And then it's like, boom. So it's that kind of thing has been hard, but then there's new kind of centers of focus and media. But you can work with influencers on the podcast online. There's people that have, when I was coming up doing tons of Fashion Week events in New York, there was about 6 years where I did probably 30 Fashion Week events over that time. Big event, 400 people right next in, I do it in some like cool hotel right next to the tents. A lot of indie fashion designers, people coming from all over the world to show their designs. It was really fun. And during that time, it was like the blogger for a while was queen. And they'd be in the front row along with, you'd save the seats for Vogue and Harper's as well as for the bloggers. And it was really fun. And they were doing their typing. Everybody was go, go, go. And then now it's the social media. But it's different platforms, but it's similar understanding how do you navigate a relationship? How do you make it win? So that's the continuity, I would say.
Yeah, that makes sense. So if there are business owners and entrepreneurs listening to us today, so what advice would you give to them? Would you tell them if they had not done any PR at all, aside from obviously coming and meeting you and hiring you, but when should they start thinking about doing something in PR wise?
So I would say if they're an interesting person who's they've lived a long, interesting life. Maybe they've led multiple careers, right? Sometimes people think, oh, I need to wait until I've written my book or I've launched my podcast or I've done this big thing in order to get the press. But I do try to remind people, especially if you're mid-career, you have a whole life. You have a lot of professional experience and wisdom behind you. And let's see, can we tease that out? And maybe your background as a professional in this publication, maybe that translates to positioning you as somebody who can talk about how entrepreneurs can structure their companies. Like maybe there's a through line. We know there's a through line because we know you're succeeding in your new thing or you're getting ready to succeed in you've found a new path, but let's see what that is. So that's where the storytelling comes in and creativity. I would say as well is, it's if you talk to some publicists, some PR firms, and their prices are like crazy high, there's a huge range. You might talk to some and they're like, yeah, we're a big firm. We only they're specializing in tech clients at 20, 30, 50K, or they have startups between 8 and 12K. That's great. but it doesn't have to be that much money. I work with entrepreneurs and I work with folks starting at, I have branding packages and whatnot at 1,500, and then it goes up from there. So it can be much more affordable. And I think the last tip I'd say is it's really valuable. One really valuable way to use PR is you're going to have to do advertising, right? Like often in maybe it's Instagram, Facebook, wherever you can identify your target audience, LinkedIn. If you can get some key PR pieces first, that organic proof of concept, proof of endorsement of you, that third-party endorsement, you can use that in your ads. So sometimes people like to work with me a few months and then they start with their digital ads, and being able to share their article from Forbes or something like that, it helps. They get a lot more eyeballs on it.
I think it's just so interesting. And we have our podcast, we actually have two, and then I go on a lot of podcast interviews. And what I find so interesting is that when you're having conversations with people, you find yourself explaining things differently, or hosts will ask you different questions. And I feel like that this type of process, and like talking with you in your intake process, I feel like that could help people get so much clarity around their messaging. Because it's like you said, and Jeanne and I joke, we really do joke that when we have to write copy together, we bicker like 6-year-olds, because we have very different personalities and very different communication styles, right? And so we usually have a third party help us. But yeah, so I can see where having someone like you can help people really get clarity around that. Because again, even someone like you who's so awesome with writing your own messaging, it's hard to write for yourself, right? It's hard for us to write for ourselves. So I think it's so fascinating when you start getting out there and having conversations, in particular like podcast interviews. It really brings a lot more clarity around how you help people and the information that you share with people, because it's not always the same questions that are asked. The interviews are often very different.
Very. Yeah. It's when you're being interviewed. I have clients. I have a interior designer, interior architect for hotels and big projects. And I've also gotten her, she's very into wellness. We got articles in Good, for example, where she's talking about the fitness studio of the future, right? Or the hotel of the future. And there's so many places you can go when you really understand somebody's passion, their full self. There's so many ways you can go and get creative to get press. So sometimes people have worked with, occasionally I'll talk to people and they go, oh, I tried, but we didn't get anything. We had this story and nothing came. And there are, unfortunately, like every industry, there's people that will just do the minimum and send you on your way. But I really pride myself on, I don't give up. And just like you shouldn't with your business.
Yeah, I love that. Marcy, this has been amazing. I know that all the entrepreneurs and business owners out there are probably taking feverish note of everything that you've been talking about. But we think a lot about social media and things and Facebook ads, if you will, but PR can be a great complement to that, or like you said, an even better starting point. So if people want to reach out to you and want your help, Marcy, how should they do that?
Yeah, so my website is pr.com and my email is right on there, Marcy Clark PR. I think my phone number's on there too. So yeah, reach out to me. I do a free 30 to 45 minute consultation with folks. They find that really valuable. And I like meeting people. And a lot of times people hire me right away. Sometimes people hire me, okay, I'm ready to start in the new year. Whenever that is, I'm here.
I love that. Thank you again for joining us today, Marcy. This has been so much fun.
My pleasure. Thank you, Jeanne and Kirsten. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to the Six Figure Business Mastery Podcast. If you enjoyed listening to this episode and you are ready to leverage video marketing on all online platforms, or maybe even start your own video podcast, then you need to check out the Done For You and Done With You program at themarketingvaadvantage.com and take your business to the next level.